Instead of going outside tonight, I decided to stay home and make television recaps. Tonight, we're recapping Succession, Season 3, Episode 3, an episode titled The Disruption. Now, that could just be a nickname for Kendall for this entire season. He has been a disruption. Let's just say that. And in this episode, it was no different. Now, I feel like Succession, it's best to recap it just in linear order. Some shows it's best to recap storyline by storyline. But this episode, I think, just this show in general, there's always so much going on and it interweaves so much. And the storylines aren't really separate. They bleed into each other. And it's a beautiful chaos. So I will just go in linear order, kind of starting at the top with Kendall's little interview with this journalist. He's talking about, how things are going with him and kind of the coup, if you will. And he seems very confident, seems very like, hey, also introduces kind of his theme of the episode, which is criticism. He talks about the person who's online kind of talking shit about him, basically. And he talks about it as if he's like, hey, this is cool. It's cool. It's happening to me. I understand. I get it. It's funny. And then we kind of get a sense that he's okay with that. But then she asks about his siblings, and you see that his facade kind of crumbles a little bit. He's upset about his siblings, right? And then the theme happens, the intro theme. Dun, da, 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 da. And then we kind of cut to a little bit of Waystar action. We see what's going on behind the scenes. We see how Jerry kind of isn't being really respected. Jerry says what's going to happen, and Logan's like, no, that's not what's going to happen. Don't listen to Jerry. And even the people who are, receiving these orders from Jerry, they're like, okay, Jerry. Like Jerry really has no power, it seems. Yeah, she's the acting CEO, but she really has no power. No one respects her. Everyone knows what's going on. Tom talks with Greg about what's going on, and I'm surprised that Greg is even still there. I didn't even know that he was still going into the office, but Greg is kind of caught in the middle, it seems, between Tom and Waystar and Kendall and the coup. And it seems like Greg is a little more, I don't know. It seems like Greg isn't really wanted in either place or like really desired in either place. It seems like Kendall could care less. Logan obviously could care less. It seems like Greg knows shit about Tom and Tom knows shit about Greg. So Tom is kind of scared. And that's kind of Tom's theme for the episode, is him being scared of prison. But Tom talks to Greg about like, hey, we got to get our story straight. And Greg's like, okay, yeah, I have to hang out with Kendall. And then we go to Kendall in the limo going to this journalists event. And Kendall is kind of talking to everyone. They play good tweet, bad tweet. And this is kind of what we get hit in the head with over and over again, is that Kendall wants to put up this front that he's okay with the criticism. He welcomes it. He embraces it. This isn't, and I feel like by doing that, he's trying to prove, maybe even to himself, but definitely to those around him, that what he's doing is not for his image and is not for ego. It's for the greater good, if you will. But it's clear that these tweets hurt him. They arrive. Shiv gets kind of talks with her adultery partner, and it's like, tension. Kendall shows up, even more tension. What I like about this show is that I think it handles tension in a good way, that like it's realistic in that most shows it's like tension, ooh, ah, that's the characters reacting to tension. But in this show, the characters are kind of like, they kind of laugh at it. Like the adultery partner is kind of like, all right, bye. And they kind of acknowledge the awkwardness a little bit, which, I don't know, it brings more brevity. If this show didn't do that, I think it would read a lot like a soap opera. And then Shiv also talks with Kendall, and she calls him out on his shit about this being all for his ego. And this episode really, really dives into that, I feel like. Roman gets roped into doing an interview about his dad, and he doesn't want to do it. And you can tell that he's afraid of being vulnerable about his dad. Obviously, this is something we knew about him, but that is his journey throughout this episode that we'll get into a little bit later. Shiv talks with her dad. Her dad closes all the doors. We get a little bit of Marcia screen time. I always love Marcia's screen time. And then Logan closes all the doors, talks to Shiv, and Shiv starts asking him about, what did he know, kind of. And if she's going to be president, she has to be in the know. And Logan kind of denies everything. And Shiv, you can tell Shiv knows that this is not true. And Shiv even pushes back a little bit, but obviously not too much. That was intriguing as well. Shiv kind of coming to terms with the fact that, her dad is maybe more culpable than she had originally thought. Kendall then, and like the after party of this journalism thing, turns on this comedy show. I've seen her before. I don't remember her name, but he turns on this comedy show and she's roasting him. It seems like kind of a full frontal with Samantha Bee type show. I'm pretty sure it's a real show because I've seen her before. She's very funny, but I don't know her name. I didn't remember it from the episode, but she's, roasting him basically. And he does so many times. I felt like my one critique of this episode might be that his storyline seemed a little bit repetitive, where it was like, haha, but, and that's kind of what he did this episode, was put on an outward exterior, but you can tell that he is having a hard time with it. And I think that's one of the things that really separates this show from, other dramas that I'm watching, like Invasion, for instance. Like, if you want to see a good instance of like good way to handle slow burn dramas and bad way to handle slow burn dramas, which Succession you could call a slow burn, you could not. I really don't think it is, but it's like, more character based drama is Succession. Invasion. Succession, they don't hit you in, like, they're not like, he's sad. You can just see in the performance, like the really, really good performances, you can tell when you have that good moment where someone's laughing on the inside, but laughing on the outside, but on the inside they're like, ugh. Whereas Invasion, they would just be like, ugh. There's no subtlety. Which is what Succession does so good with subtlety, and I think it really comes. You just have to have good writing, good dialogue, and good acting. Shiv and Tom. Shiv gets back from the journalism thing, talks to Tom. Tom's having a rough time. He just talked to the guy that he wanted to talk to with Greg, and Tom is having a rough time because the guy told him that basically Tom's going to go to prison. If the papers if all the info gets out about what Tom knew, Tom's going to go to prison. Tom talks to Shiv, and Tom is like, I'm gonna fall on my sword for your dad. And at first, Shiv is like, no, oh no, don't. But then you can see her kind of have a realization, and I don't really know what the realization is. Sound off in the comments, but you can tell that she's like, maybe this could be good for me in some way, and just another way that her and Tom's relationship is fucked up. But she's like, oh, don't, but like, not a bad idea. At first I thought this might be a test, but you can tell that Tom actually like is like, okay, maybe I will. And I don't really get, I think he's like, if I'm going to go to prison anyway, I might as well get favors for it. But he basically is like, okay, I'll talk to Logan. And then the next scene, he talks to Logan and he's like, hey, I'll go to prison for you. And Logan's like, thanks. That's really nice of you. And then walks away. And I know that Logan is going to be like, oh, that guy went to prison for me, whatever. Yeah, I'll pay him back somehow. You know that this isn't going to go well for Tom. Probably my favorite scene of the episode, one of my favorite scenes of Succession ever, is, I think this is like a White House contact, right? That was on the news. Correct me if I'm wrong here. I think it was like a White House contact gets off the news. Logan pulls her aside, and immediately they're like, oh, we know each other, which is fascinating. It was just such a cool conversation because you really get to see how things work, like at the top, with all this coded language where they both know what they're talking. And obviously this is a dramatization. This might not be exactly how it works at the top, but it was still fascinating. It was still fun to watch. That Logan was basically talking to the president in this way. He was like, hey, can the president get me out of this problem that I'm having? And I feel like that's a rare thing that we see in TV. And this season is so good because it's really addressing really prominent things that are happening in the world right now, which is like fake news and media, owning the media. Who are you really watching talk? Like, what pots do people have their hands in. Like they said so much about we can make the president look good. Just the power of media and what media can do to the laws of our country. Like we can make the president look good, which will give him 4 more years and would change the country irreversibly, right? It's basically the vibe of what we're getting. And that's kind of what Kendall's whole pushback is. Again, it's just really, really cool. Really, really cool to see. So that was a great scene. Shiv is set to have this big town hall with the employees at Waystar. Everyone's gathered looking over. And Kendall comes in. And he comes in way before this, but everyone's freaking out. Kendall talks to Tom. Weird conversation there. Kendall then goes into his office. They send up some like security guy to be like, and Kendall's like, that was weird. Doesn't scare him though. And Kendall hands a shopping list to this guy, and he's like, hey, take this. And all at the same time, there's this like weird air temperature thing happening in his office. I didn't really understand what that meant. Let me know. And the guy they hand the list off to, Remy, I think is his name, leaves, and we see what he bought once Shiv starts giving her presentation. And she starts talking, and then they play this song. If you saw the episode, you know what song I'm talking about. Very applicable to what's happening. Is basically a slap in the face. They start blasting it from these massive speakers that they've put out all around the building. Don't know how they managed to do that. You would think that security would be a little tighter on that one. But nonetheless, they managed to hide these speakers all around, these massive speakers, and blast this music. Blast, blast, blast. And Shiv storms off the town hall. It's chaos. And people are pissed. In reaction, Shiv writes this piece about Kendall, slamming him to the point that Roman is not willing to sign his name on this piece of paper. This basically this attack on Kendall. Connor isn't willing to do so either, but it's brutal, this stuff that Shiv is saying about Kendall. And it's fun to watch a show where people fight in this way. I like my Demon Slayer where people fight with swords, but it's fun to watch people fight through like the media. It's really cool to watch as well. Shiv basically is like, okay, I'll publish this piece on my own. Kendall goes in to this show that he's been teasing all episode. He's been like, I'm going to go in because he wants to really show that this does not bother him, that none of this media attention, none of this criticism bothers him. He wants to be like basically the cool English teacher. He goes in, everything's fine. He talks to the writer. He's like, hey, slam me, give me hell. Walks out, sees this piece that Shiv has written, and it hurts him bad. I think, and it goes back to the beginning of the episode with the little hint that, what hurts Kendall a lot is the fact that his siblings are not willing to back him up on this. It was really hard for him to see Shiv write that stuff about him, especially when he's wanted Shiv to be in with him this whole time. And then Kendall ghosts. The worst thing he could have done for his image. He doesn't go on the show. He's like, I'm out. He says that goes and hides in like the server room or something. Or that's dramatic, but he like watches what's happening as it's happening. And I don't know how he gets out of that building without getting attacked. But he gets out somehow. I'm sure he gets out. I'm sure the next episode isn't like Kendall's escape from the late night show building. Roman gives his interview, or is told the questions for his interview, and I think, or no, that was before, but like he talks to his dad about the interview, and his dad's like, what was this story that you told about our favorite memory? I don't remember that at all. And Roman's like, that was Connor. Again, telling us that Logan was not a father to these people. They revere him so much because of his presence, his power, and what he's given them, I think, as opposed to what he's given them as a father. And then the FBI comes. And that was a cool scene, just being like, what the fuck can we do? What the fuck can we do? We can't do anything. Logan concedes, the FBI comes in, and there's the scene of Hugo whispering to Tom, saying, hey, the FBI's here. And Tom, in that moment, realizes, hey, I'm going to prison. And then, yeah, that's kind of how the episode ends. The FBI storming the building. Super big things to come for this show. Very exciting. This is episode 3. Sorry, I keep bringing this back to Invasion, which is a show that I'm also recapping at the moment, episode by episode. But that episode 3 versus this episode 3 is like where they're at in terms of a season is just astronomically different. Astronomically different. So great stuff from Succession. I would give this episode a 4 out of 5. And yeah, that's it. Excited for next week. Curb Your Enthusiasm recap coming soon. Another great HBO show. If you're an HBO head like me, subscribe. Wouldn't hurt.